sometimes that when you hear stories about someone's played the wrong anthem, that this is deliberate, just to sort of unnerve people,
Yeah, it'll throw you.
Our technical operator has suggested Poirier as the new album.
Absolutely.
I think that's the perfect idea.
I'm with that.
Okay. It's 4 minutes to 5 and Māori Language Week has come to an end. Te Manu Kurahi editor Shannon Honui-Thompson is here. Hello there, kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa.
And Shannon, for the end of Māori Language Week, has promised to run us through some handy te reo phrases for the weekend. Over to you, Shannon.
Well, today is Friday, rā mere, and we all love Friday because it's the end of the week. And, a really well-known phrase is, thank God it's Friday.
Yeah.
And, so just in te reo, you could say, karoria hareruria, ko te rā mere. It's Friday, thank God.
Karorera harerurira.
Karoria hareruia.
Hareruia. Oh, that's hallelujah. It's a transliteration.
Yes.
Gotcha,
Yep.
yeah.
Transliteration. Ko te rā mere. Karoria hareruia, ko te rā mere.
Ko te rā mere. Rā mere.
Yeah, rā mere.
Rā mere. Gotcha.
Can you do TGIF in Māori? Do you do letters? Do you do the names of letters?
Well, we do. Well, there is one, LOL, laugh out loud. It's quite well known.
Yeah.
And in Māori, we would text KTK, kaha te kata.
That's good.
That's great.
Kaha te kata, which kaha is really, power, kata, laugh. So LOL, laugh out loud, kaha te kata. So, next time you text, instead of a LOL, put a KTK.
That's fantastic.
Very good. My producer wanted some lotto-related ones, please, for when she wins.
Well, to be fair, if I won lotto, I probably wouldn't say anything.
No.
I wouldn't tell anyone. So I would, me noho ngu aho, I would stay silent.
Mm-hmm.
But, if I did win and I decided to tell my husband, I would probably say to him, I am a winner, he toa aho.
He toa aho.
He tō aho.
He toa aho. Toa being winner. And
What if you want to tell your husband quietly? What's the Māori word for quietly?
well, noho ngu is silent.
Okay.
Quiet would probably be hoi hoi, quiet. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think any of us were winners. We wouldn't tell too many people.
No, keep it very quiet.
What about
Yeah.
What about if you just want to wish someone good luck, whether for the lotto draw, for some sports on the weekend?
Yep,
Or...
good luck. Kia wai Māori, good luck.
Kia wai Māori.
Kia wai Māori.
Kia wai Māori. Sorry, I'm just.
No, that's great. It's nice having someone to...
Yeah.
I'm not saying it for nothing.
Does sound a bit like a model of car, that one. I've just bought a Kia Waimarie.
Yeah.
Kia wai
This is
Māori.
the one on from the
that means-
Sportage.
That would be a really good name for a car, actually.
So wai Māori.
It's luck or good fortune.
Okay.
It's fortune, yeah.
Yeah.
Jock, can you remember what you wanted to ask Shannon, which phrase it was?
I can't remember at all. I mean, I as much as I respect and admire the Maori language, I'm someone who's still struggling with English, which I have done since 1958 when we arrived in this country.
We were
and I
talking
used to get beaten up at school for not being able to speak it properly, and there's still some doubt these days as to whether I do.
But you
I
sound
just
pretty
have-
good to me, Jock. We were talking about buying shoes, though.
Yeah.
Buying shoes, yeah,
Because
that's right,
in
buying
Italian,
shoes.
it's quanto costa le scarpe.
Wow.
How much are the shoes in Māori?
How much are the shoes?
Yeah.
Probably be e hea te utu o ngā hu. So shoes for in Māori are hu, which is another transliteralization. I can't even say that word, so I'm not very good at English either. Doc. And, how much, e hea, ngā hu, the shoes. Yeah, e hea te utu. What is the price?
Yeah.
Utu is price.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so utu is the cost of something.
Yeah, cost of something. Not
Yeah.
utu as in the movie.
Sure.
There's
Revenge.
two. There's two different meanings to that word.
Yeah.
Shannon Honui-Thompson, thanks so much for coming in. What's thanks? I was going to
Kia
say
ora.
kapai, but what's thank you?
Yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
Okay, good enough for me.
Are we fun? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Look, the news is coming up. I have to stay out of the way of the pips. That's my job. Michelle
Go
Aikman.
home, mate.
Thanks very much, Jock Anderson. Nice to talk to you as always.
All the best.
Kia ora,
Checkpoints.
Jesse.
Checkpoints with John Campbell is next.
Kia ora koto katoa, ko John Campbell ahau. Haere mai, welcome to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Tonight, we go to Dallas, where a peaceful protest against two more police shootings of black men has suddenly seen police open fire on by what appears to be two gunmen. It does appear that one possible suspect is in custody, but it also appears someone has been incorrectly identified as a suspect. We'll go to Dallas throughout the program tonight. Also tonight, housing. The Prime Minister still wants the Reserve Bank to get on with it, but what is it? And what about the impact of immigration? Lots more on the program tonight, but let's get to the news and then to Dallas. We begin with Katrina Batten.
Kia ora, good evening. 4 police officers have been fatally shot and 7 wounded by snipers in Dallas, Texas, at one of many demonstrations held across the United States against 2 fatal police shootings of black men. The Dallas Police Chief, David Brown, says 2 snipers in elevated positions shot 11 officers, killing 3. The police said on Twitter later a 4th officer had died. At least 1 more was in surgery. Police Chief Brown says snipers shot from elevated positions during the protest. He circulated photos of a man photographed among the protesters carrying a rifle and has asked for the public's help.
Give us that information so we can bring these people to justice. We also believe that these suspects have threatened to plant a bomb in the downtown area.
Dallas Police Chief David Brown. The shooting happened as largely peaceful protests unfolded around the United States after the shooting of Philando Castile by police near St. Paul, Minnesota. His girlfriend posted live video on the internet of the bloody scene minutes afterwards, which was widely viewed. In Louisiana, the US Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation into the shooting of Alton Sterling, who was killed by police outside a convenience store in Baton Rouge. Speaking from Poland before the police deaths, the President Barack Obama made an impassioned plea, saying America is better than this and all Americans should be deeply troubled.
This is recognizing that there is a particular burden that is being placed on a group of our fellow citizens. And we should care about that. And we can't dismiss it.
Barack Obama. In the past few minutes, the Dallas police say a person of interest to them over the killing of 4 police officers has turned themselves in. The Prime Minister says the government won't change its immigration policy to try to curb the housing crisis. The Reserve Bank has said migration is one of the factors driving up housing prices by increasing demand. But John Key says the majority of immigrants are from categories that can't or shouldn't be changed. He says the government doesn't want to stop returning New Zealanders or Australians buying homes, and it doesn't want to shut out foreign students who are valuable to the economy. He says other groups, like those on temporary visas, aren't big home buyers, so there's very little change that could make a difference.
The only place that you can really have a debate is fundamentally about the skills category, and we do adjust that quite regularly, and if we think that we've got those skills locally, we won't bring those people in.
John Key. The High Court has heard evidence of the mental state of a live-in man, Eric McIsaac, when he murdered his half-brother. It happened while on an overnight stay at Waitarere Beach, despite the fact they had been close for years. The court, sitting in Palmerston North, heard that 10-year-old Alex Fisher died immediately after being struck on the head while he was asleep last October. The defence lawyer, Letitia Ord, says her client had mental health problems even though he hadn't been diagnosed with a psychiatric illness.
He'd formed certain fixed and rigid beliefs. He'd indicated himself to his own younger brother that he was wanting to kill himself, and he had other difficulties, including a fixation that he was in fact himself dying.
Letitia Ord told the court McIsaac did not admit he was deluded and said he wanted to take responsibility for his actions. He's been jailed for life with a minimum non-parole period of 14 years. Customs officers have seized a shipment of 4,000 handbags holding 30 kilograms of methamphetamine or P with an estimated street value of $30 million. Each handbag had 2 to 5 silica gel packs with approximately 3.6 grams of P hidden in most packs. Customs Investigations Manager Maurice O'Brien says a large team spent a day and a half opening and testing thousands of tiny meth-filled sachets. He says the seizure shows criminals are going to great lengths to smuggle drugs into the country, but Customs is successfully updating its risk assessment and examination methods. State Highway 3 remains blocked through the Manawatu Gorge after a truck broke through barriers and plunged into the river. The police say the driver is safe and work has been done since this morning to pull the truck out of the water. To sport, and the New Zealand golfer Lydia Ko is well off the pace after the first round of the US Open in California. Ko shot a 1 over par 73 to sit 9 shots off the lead in a tie for 52nd in the third major of the year. Fellow New Zealander Liv Cheng shot a 9 over par 81. South Korea's Miriam Lee leads at 8 under. After a 5-set battle to overcome Frenchman Jo-Wilfried Tsonga and advance to the Final Four at Wimbledon, things haven't got any easier for home favourite Andy Murray. Murray plays Thomas Berdych in the semi-finals and says the 10th-seeded Czech always seems comfortable in the Wimbledon environment.
He's been to the final here. He's beaten Djokovic and Federer, at Wimbledon. So he's very, very good. He's won some tough matches here, had a tough battle in the fourth round and come through that. So he's played a lot of tennis. He'll be feeling comfortable on the court, and he'll need to play well.
The other semi-final features Roger Federer and Canada's Milos Raonic. Parramatta are denying reports that star playmaker Kieran Foran has quit the National Rugby League club. The former Manly and Kiwis international has been battling injury and personal issues. However, the Eels say they've had no request from Foran to leave the club. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, another edition of London Calling, the late, great Joe Strummer's magnificent radio show, this evening focusing on the Punjabi and Bhangra sounds of the British industrial Midlands. And Karen Lehman looks forward to this weekend's most Wuthering Heights day ever, when hundreds of red-clad men, women and children head for the hills and make like Kate Bush. If that's not a sonic tonic, I don't know what is. On Nights after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met service weather to midnight tomorrow, Apopo. There are warnings in force for parts of central New Zealand today. Gisborne to Wairarapa, rain with some heavy falls from Hawke's Bay northwards, easing to showers tonight or tomorrow morning and gradually clearing in Wairarapa. And for the remainder of the North Island, scattered rain or showers becoming confined to eastern Northland tomorrow. Severe gale southeasterlies about the central high country and eastern Bay of Plenty easing tomorrow. Nelson, Bulla and Westland mainly fine with high cloud. Southeasterlies, severe gale in exposed places today. Marlborough and Canterbury, cloudy with scattered rain or drizzle, clearing tomorrow and becoming fine. Severe southeast gales about the Sounds easing tomorrow. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, fine spells increasing, frosts tomorrow morning. And for the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy. It's just gone 5:08.
Thanks, Katrina. Let's start in Dallas, of course. 4 Dallas police officers are dead and 7 have been wounded, along with 1 civilian in a shooting during a Black Lives Matter protest in the Texas city this afternoon, our time. Thousands of people turned out for a peaceful rally this afternoon. Authorities say 2 snipers shot at the officers from an elevated position, but new footage appears to be contradicting that, showing at least 1 gunman on the ground. Witnesses say they heard gunshots in rapid succession, with some thinking they were just fireworks. We're standing by now to take a police media conference live from Dallas. But first, this was posted on Twitter by a witness.
Oh my God, there's people laying on the ground. I hope they're just hiding.
What the fuck is going on? Somebody's really armed to the teeth.
Oh my God.
This is not one person with a. This is a person with a big knife. A few magazines.
Oh my God. They can't be found. Oh my God.
Protest.
Oh my God.
Shortly after the shooting, one witness, Amanda Marie Clean, spoke with CNN.
I'll have to excuse my nerves because my heart's still beating very fast. But I live on Main Street. I live about 4 blocks from Willow Garden. And the rally was supposed to be done around 9, and I usually take the puppies out at 8. And it was about 8:45, and they were just ready to go out. So we took them down, and there was still a little bit of people out there, but probably looked like it had died down to about a couple hundred maybe. And then all of a sudden, we started hearing pop, 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 pop.
Police say they're searching for at least 2 suspects, and in the past half hour someone has been taken into custody. There's real confusion around this, with a photo of somebody posted and widely distributed who appears now to have been eliminated as a suspect. The Dallas Police Chief David Brown held a news conference a short time ago and told the media a bomb may also have been planted.
We also believe that these suspects have threatened to plant a bomb in the downtown area. We have reached out to our federal law enforcement partners, both the FBI and the ATF, to help us search for both the suspects, or maybe it's more, and to do a very thorough search of this area where we believe there might be a bomb planted.
Dallas Police Chief David Brown. Now, that media conference is roughly an hour old now. We understand a new one is about to commence any moment, and we will go there live. All the stuff we've played for you so far is from the time of the shooting and from people who were speaking immediately afterwards. What's happening in Dallas now? Well, Tim Cato is a journalist. He says the city is in lockdown. I spoke with him a short time ago.
Right now, I'm in Dallas. There is an active shooter situation. As far as I know, the Dallas chief of police has released a report saying that 11 are injured and 3 are confirmed dead. I'm on the scene right now, and there's a lot of police presence. They've slowly backed up the perimeter for where pedestrians can stand, and I've been backed up a couple of times already now. A lot of drawn guns and rifles that I see from the police.
And Tim, this started as a peaceful protest, and reports are suggesting it was a sniper from a building. Is that what you're hearing?
That's everything I've heard. Yes. In fact, maybe 2 snipers from what I've heard. We don't know for sure yet. There's no confirmed people captured or detained from this yet. But yes, 2 snipers on the roof is the report.
And so obviously all the protesters have dispersed, the people who were there peacefully. And so who's there now? Just the police and empty streets, is it?
No, there's a lot of people in downtown who just can't get home. They rely on mass public transportation, and they can't get home to their houses. They're stuck without the buses or the subways, or they're stuck not being able to go through streets that are blocked off by police. So it's a lot of people just hanging around out here, not really able to go home right now.
And what's the mood amongst these people?
A lot of people, it's not as bad as you might think. People, we're pretty far removed from it, and we understand that, so we're not worried or for safety or anything. But certainly, it's kind of tense, and it's a little bit scary just to know that this could be happening to where you live. Where I live and all that.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. Are people distressed?
Yeah, I would guess so. Yeah, the people I've talked to, a lot of them just want to go home. And like I said, without the public transportation, it's hard to do for a lot of these people who don't have other ways to get home.
We're still waiting for the police media conference to start. We're going to go to the managing editor at KERA, K-E-R-A News, Eric Orson, who's joining us now live. Eric, I know you haven't got long because you are very busy there, obviously, in Dallas, Texas. What's the latest as you know it?
The latest right now is that 4 officers have been confirmed dead. 7 others are injured. So a total of 11 officers were shot. That includes Dallas Police Department officers, municipal officers, as well as transit officers who work for the local light rail and train and bus service. A police press conference is going to be happening in the next 15 minutes or so. About 800 people were gathered in downtown Dallas tonight when this all happened. They were protesting, the police shootings in Minnesota and Louisiana. It was a peaceful protest, And at the end is when the snipers started shooting bullets into the crowd, apparently targeting law enforcement. People were scattering. People were very, scared. All of a sudden, these snipers who were apparently on an elevated building shooting at law enforcement.
Eric Wilson, thank you so much. Eric is news editor at Kera, K-E-R-A News in Dallas. As Eric said, there is a police media conference due any moment. That will have the latest on the condition of the 7 police officers who were understood to be wounded, and also, obviously, whether or not suspects are in custody. Lots of reporting and retractions and reinventions of actually what's going on there. Today's police shootings in Dallas came after the deaths of black men Alton Sterling from Louisiana and Philando Castile from Minnesota this week. As our reporter Alex Ashton explains, the deaths of the men prompted people across America to take their protests to the streets.
Outrage across the United States at the killing of 2 black men by police officers in just 3 days. Protesters marched throughout the country, gathering in New York, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, St. Paul and other smaller cities, waving signs to show their anger at what they see as police brutality. On Tuesday, 37-year-old Alton Sterling was killed in Louisiana after an altercation with the police. And yesterday in Minnesota, another killing, this time of 32-year-old Philando Castile. Mr. Castile's girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, and her young daughter were in the car at the time. Ms. Reynolds says a police officer asked Mr. Castile for his licence and registration, so he reached down to grab it.
He began to let the officer know that he was concealed and carried. He was armed. As he began to get himself back comfortable from constantly being asked for identification and registration, the officer let off shots. Not 1 shot, not 2 shots, not 3 shots, not 4 shots, but 5 shots!
Ms. Reynolds streamed live footage of the events on Facebook before she says she was handcuffed and questioned by the police. The 2 shooting deaths have sparked an outcry on social media and a federal investigation. Speaking on his arrival in Poland, the US President Barack Obama said when shootings like this happen, many people of colour begin to think they're not being treated equally. But he said this isn't just an issue for black people, and everyone should be concerned.
When we see data that indicates disparities in how African Americans and Latinos may be treated in various jurisdictions around the country, then it's incumbent on all of us to say we can do better than this. We are better than this.
The Governor of Minnesota, Mark Dayton, says it seemed Philando Castile was pulled over for a broken tail light, and he says no one should be shot and killed for such a reason.
Would this have happened if those passengers, the driver and the passenger, were white? I don't think it would have. If this kind of racism exists, and that it's incumbent upon all of us to vow that we're going to do whatever we can to see that it doesn't happen, it doesn't continue to happen.
Lawyers who represented families of black men killed by the police in South Carolina called the shooting of Mr. Sterling heinous. Speaking outside the market where Mr. Sterling was shot, L. Chris Stewart said shootings like this would continue unless the black community rose up against police brutality.
Watching the videotape of the murder of Mr. Sterling brought me the same sickness that I had watching the videotape of my former client Walter Scott, of my former client Chase Sherman, of my former client Gregory Towns, and too many others to name. And here we are again. We're not buying that the body cams fell off. We're not buying that he reached for his weapon. Because what you see on that videotape, especially that second one, is heinous.
The men's deaths reigniting a nation and worldwide debate about the police's use of force and their treatment of African Americans. For Checkpoint, call Alex Ashton, TNA.
90 minutes past 5. So who was on the Black Lives Matter protest in Dallas that these shooters opened fire on? Well, one of them was Cedric Williams, who is a young Dallas resident.
Well, we got there around, I'd say 9 o'clock, and there's a square blocked off of the whole downtown Dallas, and I'd say you could get in, but you couldn't get out. You could get out, but you couldn't get in. And there's like a helicopter like flying around the green building and what's the name of it? The Crown Plaza. And there's supposedly like he's on the 7th floor.
And so you think that's where the sniper is, and there's a helicopter flying around that building, is there?
Yes. They have that, they have the whole block of that building like shut down.
And Cedric, had you gone down there to participate in the peaceful protests, or did you go down? So you were just... So how did you realise what was going on? When did you learn that there was someone firing on police?
I realized it when the gunshots were like announced on Twitter, and then like you could see like after like the SWAT started coming in and like the police cars doubling.
And so you found out through social media, and then the police started arriving. How did people start reacting? Were people running away from the scene? Were they going past you trying to get away? What was going on?
I'd say they were more like nosy. They wanted to know what was happening.
Wow. And what's it like there now, Cedric? Where are you? Can you describe where you are? Are you still near the scene of the shooting, or have you been pushed away from it?
We were pushed away from the scene, I'd say, about 15 minutes ago. It was getting, we left when supposedly there was, like, more gunshots around where my friends were, and then there is, like, an allegation that there's a bomb. There was a bomb placed. So we gathered up all our friends, and we decided that it was time to go.
Cedric Williams, a young Dallas resident who was attending the protest. Austin York is a reporter for KRLD News, is on the streets in Dallas. Austin, we so appreciate you joining us live on Checkpoint. We know how busy you must be. Can you describe what it's like where you are now, Austin?
Well, I'm right now in the heart of downtown Dallas, and this is still a very active scene. Police officers are pretty much on every corner in the downtown area. And I would say there's at least 100 patrol cars in very specific locations across this downtown area. Right now, I have never seen anything like this. It is seriously like a military lockdown on a city. There are people, but every officer that has a weapon has it drawn, and is telling us every 30 or so, every minute to 30 minutes or so to get back further so they can keep that perimeter. We don't know. The problem is we don't know really what the scene is right now. We know that one person of interest has turned himself in. There was another suspect, which police are calling a suspect, they got into a shootout with that has been apprehended. But other than that, we don't know anything else. And we know other than 11 officers were shot at by 2 snipers is what Dallas Police Chief David Brown is saying from an elevated position. 4 of them are dead. 3 are in critical condition. I'm sorry, you can still hear helicopters flying above. And 2 are right now in surgery, and we don't know the conditions of the rest. We also know that 1 civilian was shot as well in the shooting tonight.
Austin, I know you have to go, but very quickly, that person of interest who turns himself in does appear on the face of it to have been eliminated. It does seem that at least one of the shooters is still at large, although we're about to hear more from Dallas Police. I was looking at the protests prior to the shooting taking place. There were police officers on bicycles and shorts. This was very relaxed and informal prior to the shooting, and suddenly all of this just goes so horribly wrong.
Absolutely. This was a very peaceful protest. 2 officers had 2 incidents around the nation, have gotten police brutality shootings, have gotten people upset. So they had a protest. Again, it was very peaceful. And then suddenly at the end of this, it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, Austin, we so appreciate your time. Austin York, who's filing for KRLD there in Dallas, Texas, taking time to speak to us live. We're standing by for that media conference. We might take a break from Dallas now and turn to some other news of the day. Coming up, we will of course have more from Dallas, and the moment the media conference being held by the Dallas PD begins, we will go to it live. But coming up, we do have the Prime Minister John Campbell on housing. There seems to be a bit of a standoff between the Prime Minister and the Reserve Bank. We will look at that, and a man is jailed for 8 years for the abduction and assault of a 5-year-old Palmerston North girl. Let's stay with crime. The man jailed for murdering his half-brother is keeping quiet about his reasons for killing him. The High Court in Palmerston North heard that 26-year-old Eric McIsaac would not say why he bludgeoned 10-year-old Alex Fisher to death while on an overnight stay at Waitarere Beach near Levin last October. McIsaac admitted the charge and was today jailed for life with a minimum non-parole period of 14 years. Eric Frickberg was in court.
Outlining details of the crime, Justice David Collins said McIsaac and Alex were on an overnight trip to the beach when McIsaac broke into a property in a small township and removed bedding and a wood splitter. After buying a drink at a local shop, the pair went to the beach where Alex fell asleep in the bedding.
After Alex had fallen asleep, you struck him twice in the head with the wood splitter. Alex would have died immediately and would not have known what had happened.
Justice Collins said McIsaac didn't tell anyone about what had happened and didn't help police with their 3-day search for his half-brother.
Your conduct is impossible to comprehend, particularly given the apparently close relationship that you had with Alex.
The judge then went on to describe the crime as the worst nightmare possible for a parent, especially since McIsaac's mother had effectively lost 2 children as a result. He added McIsaac had a lifelong struggle with mental issues and at the time of Alex's death believed that Alex had been abused and that he, McIsaac, was dying of cancer. McIsaac's lawyer, Letitia Ord, told the court that despite that, her client had never been diagnosed with an actual psychiatric illness.
Unfortunately, he doesn't have what is a clearly defined psychiatric condition. I think his symptoms are described in the latest report as atypical. It seems possible that he may have suffered from some sort of developmental disorder, personality dysfunction. These have been present since childhood.
Crown Counsel Ben Vanderkook told the court it was the defendant's mental state that was deterring him from revealing why he did kill his brother.
This is not a murder which might be described as some of the cases as verging on the evil or the frenzied or the completely disordered. And the difficulty is this very fine balance between not knowing why and what was done.
The judge accepted McIsaac had mental health problems, even if they didn't constitute an official psychiatric disease. He deducted 18 months off the sentence for this and another 18 months for McIsaac's early plea of guilty, reducing his non-parole period from 17 years to 14. McIsaac was also jailed concurrently for 2 lesser offences. Despite the confusion, the judge still saw McIsaac's offence as involving some degree of planning and premeditation and was a brutal one towards his brother.
He was just 10 years old. He was asleep at the time he murdered him. He had no chance of fleeing or defending himself.
Outside the courthouse, Detective Sergeant Neil Forlong of Horowhenua Police read a statement on behalf of the family.
Alex was much more than the sad events surrounding the end of his life. We, his parents, siblings and family, had nearly 11 years of memories of a treasured and much-loved boy who will forever live in the hearts of so many. We wish to focus on these memories and do the one thing that matters most. Remember Alex.
During the inquiry, McIsaac told his lawyer that he didn't want to claim he was deluded, but wanted to accept responsibility for his actions, and he showed no emotion as he was led from the dock to jail. For Checkpoint, Eric Frickberg.
We're going to stay in Palmerston North a bit longer. A court has heard how a 47-year-old farmhand could not fight his demons, that was a quote, and attacked a 5-year-old girl there 25 years after doing the same in Australia. Brendan Paul Henson was jailed for 8 years this afternoon for abducting a girl from the side of the road in February, driving her to a secluded location and assaulting her. The High Court in Palmerston North heard Henson could still not explain his actions. Our reporter Max Toll was at his sentencing.
Henson had already admitted snatching the girl in February while she walked to school, fighting off the kicks and punches of her older sisters as he picked her up and put her in his car. Hours later, he dumped her on the other side of the city. He had also admitted putting his hand on the girl's leg in a public park 2 days earlier, but the question on everyone's minds wasn't answered today. Why? Henson's lawyer, Fergus Steedman, told the court Henson has never explained why he did what he did, but did show emotion reading the girl's mother's victim impact statement.
I watched him as he read it, and his reaction was appropriate. He had known for months that he had hurt a little girl terribly, but the full impact of the suffering that he had caused on so many people seemingly hadn't hit him until he read what the victim's mother had to say.
It was revealed in court Henson had attacked before. In 1991, in Australia, he assaulted another 5-year-old girl as she slept and was jailed for 15 months. Mr. Steedman told the court for a long time Henson believed he'd conquered his dark thoughts.
He stressed to me that he did think that he had managed to bury the demons. He made this comment to me: I thought that it, meaning his sexual attraction to young girls, was a long time finished. I thought that I was normal again. Well, sadly he wasn't. He's never had the treatment which we now know he should have had.
Psychological reports described Henson as a private person who took a while to get to know people. Mr. Steedman said he wanted to be rehabilitated, treatment he would now get after today. The Crown lawyer, Ben van der Kolk, told the court his attack has had a massive impact on the girl's whole family.
The offending almost had an infectious or viral effect on the children and their mother and the way they lead their lives. And descriptions such as being good for some weeks and then deteriorating, spontaneous crying, the worst affected changes in the way they regard their clothing, and very simple matters like that, dear to children, Your Honour, is part of the impact.
At his last appearance in May, a probation officer's report showed Henson was at a moderate to high risk of reoffending and should be given an open-ended jail sentence. Instead, Justice Collins jailed him for 8 years, and he must serve a minimum of 5 years.
I am mindful of the need not to punish you unnecessarily for your previous offending. You have pleaded guilty at a very early stage. You are entitled to a significant discount for this. You have expressed remorse for your offending. I do consider this to be genuine remorse.
Members of the girl's family and friends yelled abuse as Henson was led away moments later. For Checkpoint, Cormac Stoltenay.
It's 5:31 on Checkpoint, which means it's midnight in Dallas. The police there are about to hold a media conference. We will go to it live. We believe the Mayor, Mike Rawlings, will also be involved. Pressure ramps up for the government to review its immigration-migration policy and what impact is it having on housing prices in Auckland. Plus, do the Reserve Bank and the Prime Minister agree on how to respond to all of this? And the Auckland businessman who threatened to spike infant milk formula with 1080 poison has 15 months added to his prison sentence for some other stuff. All of that, plus more from Dallas, of course, coming up. But first, Katrina Batten with the headlines.
4 police officers have been killed and 7 wounded by snipers who targeted them during rallies in Dallas to protest against the fatal shooting of 2 black men by police this week. The city's police chief, David Brown, told a news conference 2 snipers in elevated positions shot 11 officers, killing 3 in what appeared to be a coordinated attack. A 4th officer died, the police said later on Twitter. Some of the victims were shot in the back. The police say a suspect they engaged in a shootout has been arrested and a person of interest has also turned himself in. Austin York, a reporter for KRLD News, who's on the streets in Dallas, told Checkpoint the city is in full military lockdown. The Prime Minister says the government won't change its immigration policy to try to curb the housing crisis. The Reserve Bank has said migration is one of the factors driving up housing prices by increasing demand. But John Key says the majority of immigrants aren't from categories that can't or shouldn't be changed. The High Court has heard evidence of the mental state of a live-in man, Eric McIsaac, when he murdered his half-brother, 10-year-old Alex Fisher, at Waitarere Beach. The defence lawyer, Letitia Ord, said her client had mental health problems, even though he hadn't been diagnosed with a psychiatric illness. McIsaac has been jailed for life with a minimum non-parole period of 14 years. Customs officers have seized a shipment of 4,000 handbags holding 30 kilograms of methamphetamine with an estimated street value of $30 million. Each handbag had 2 to 5 silica gel packs with approximately 3.6 grams of P hidden in most packs. And the Hawke's Bay Regional Council will not sign off on spending $80 million on the Ruataniwha Dam yet, despite 3 key conditions being met. It's waiting for final confirmation of investor interest. Those are the headlines.
Thanks, Katrina. Thanks, Katrina. We're going to go live to Dallas now. Mike Rawlings, the Mayor, is having a media conference with the Police Chief, David Brown. We believe this.
Been exchanging gunfire with us and not being very cooperative in the negotiations. Before I came here, I asked for plans to end this standoff. And as soon as I'm done here, I'll be presented with those plans.
This is the Police Chief, David Brown, speaking live.
To this second floor garage as we recap the previous press release. We have in custody a female who was in the same area of the El Centro garage, and we followed a Mercedes with two suspects who had camouflage bags, who officers end up stopping on traffic in the Oak Cliff area near Polk and 67. And they are in custody and being interviewed. The suspect that we are negotiating with that has exchanged gunfire with us over the last 45 minutes has told our negotiators that the end is coming and he's going to hurt and kill more of us, meaning law enforcement, and that there are bombs all over the place in this garage and in downtown. So we are being very careful in our tactics so that we don't injure or put any of our officers in harm's way, including the citizens of Dallas as we negotiate further. We still don't have a complete comfort level that we have all the suspects. So we will continue a very, very rigorous investigation and search of downtown. We're likely to be working throughout the early morning hours of Friday until we are satisfied that all suspects have been captured and have an opportunity to be interviewed so that we can fully understand what's motivated this attack on our officers. As I mentioned in the press release before we came out, one of our officers who was in surgery that we had hopes would survive passed, bringing the total count of officers that passed away to 4, 3 Dallas police officers and 1 DART officer. We're continuing to ask for the public's prayers and support and encouragement. But I could just tell you, I've never been more proud of a police officer and being a part of this great, noble profession. Seeing the courage, the professionalism, and just the grit to stay on scene in an area looking for suspects, knowing that we are vulnerable. We don't know where they are, and our downtown is very large with a lot of high buildings. And some of the stories I've heard from officers talking about what happened, running toward gunfire to help the injured officers, to get them transported to the hospital by patrol car, not having the time to wait for an ambulance, and just there's so many stories of great courage. So we continue to fight the good fight to bring this to a conclusion. But it's still a very tenuous situation, and we, again, as soon as the mayor is done, we'll take additional questions from you. Then we'll have to be leaving. Thanks.
Thank you. Concerning what is going to happen tomorrow morning, this is still an active crime scene, and
this is the Mayor of Dallas, Mike Rawlings, speaking.
How big that crime scene is. There are many people that work in the downtown area. We asked them to stay away from that crime scene. Now, how are you going to know where it is? We're going to post it on DallasCityNews.net. And you can check with your buildings that you work in and make sure that those buildings are open. We've got to support our police force and do their job to make sure we get to the bottom and the root cause of all of this. So please make it easy for the police force and other citizens to check your traffic routes in the morning before you come in. I want to add that it is a heartbreaking morning to lose these 4 officers that proudly served our citizens. To say that our police officers put their life on the line every day is no hyperbole, ladies and gentlemen. It's a reality. We as a city, we as a country must come together, lock arms, and heal the wounds that we all feel from time to time. Words matter. Leadership matters at this time. I'm proud of our chief. With that, we'll take questions.
What can you tell us about this suspect? Is this someone local? What brought this person to Dallas?
At this point, we don't have a lot of cooperation to find those answers, but we will be continuing our interrogation of the people we have in custody. We just are not getting the cooperation we'd like to know that answer of why, the motivation, who they are. But our detectives are diligently interviewing and interrogating these people, and we'll find that out and share it with you as soon as we have it.
So, Chief, fair to say that you're talking about 4 people, 1 in the garage, 2 in the car, and the other one...
We're going to leave that media conference in Dallas. Let's confirm what they've told us. So there are 4 police officers dead. They were all shot. According to the Dallas Police Chief David Brown, they are currently negotiating with the suspect at the garage at El Centro. Now, I've just looked at El Centro. It looks like it is a community college right there in downtown Dallas. David Brown, who was talking obviously with real feeling, is a Dallas native. He joined the police force in 1983. He is now the police chief there, and he, of course, will know the people who have been shot. We will update you with any more news, particularly around the status of the suspect who they are negotiating with in that garage as it comes to hand. The time on Checkpoint is 90 minutes to 6. Let's turn to business news now, Nona, because there's some stuff we can whistle through on this strange and sad day. What's been happening on the markets?
Yeah, it's been a very positive day for the New Zealand market. Not so much in the wider global market. There's a lot of uncertainty out there ahead of some key economic data that we're expecting overnight in the United States. That's the labour market data. There is concern that the U.S. economy is not as buoyant as some would hope, and that the Brexit has really dampened spirits right across the world. So New Zealand is still quite resilient, though. And part of that is the economists betting one way or another whether the Reserve Bank is going to cut our official cash rate in August or it won't, given the message yesterday, which was definitely not particularly clear, and it seemed that the Reserve Bank was prepared to put the housing issue on hold, even though economists say that by lowering interest rates, that will just put more fire on that hot market.
Yeah, we've got more on the Reserve Bank and the Prime Minister, and what seems a little bit of a standoff there coming up.
So there's a few other things that happened, but there's a lot of big news today, so we'll just move on. And just a short while ago, our dollar was at 72.5 US cents. That's a whole cent more than it was this time yesterday. Again, same story with the Australian currency, 96.8. Yesterday, 95. So you can see it's quite a bit up there. 56 pence yesterday. It was 55. And on the market, we broke our up streak, but just a bit. We were down just 7 points to 7,000 on the top 50 index.
Still in the sevens.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Nona. Have a wonderful weekend. Nona Peltier, thank you. Coming up on Checkpoint, we're going to look at the whole Black Lives Matter movement. In fact, we'd done this interview before the shootings in Dallas, a fascinating interview with April Rain. We are still hoping to fit it in. She is the woman behind Oscars So White. She's an African-American lawyer and journalist. She's a brilliant writer, and she talks about being black in America now and what that means. But pressure is ramping up for the government to review its migration policy. The Reserve Bank yesterday says there's been an inflow of 160,000 people in the past 3 years, putting pressure on the housing market. It says the government needs to make sure the right people with the right skills are coming into the country. New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters now warns now the Reserve Bank has highlighted immigration. It will cop criticisms of being racist and xenophobic, just like his own party has. Here's our political reporter, May Heron.
Net migration, or the number of people coming to live here or New Zealanders returning home, has been hitting records for the last 22 months in a row. That's helped boost demand for houses, particularly in Auckland. The question now being asked is whether the government has the right immigration settings in place. The Economic Development Minister, Stephen Joyce, says the government continually fine-tunes its policy and won't conduct a wholesale review. The Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank, Grant Spencer, doesn't seem to agree.
You can't manage the migration cycle, we know that. But all we're saying is that given it's an important driver, that we should be taking a look at that policy, making sure that we're getting the numbers and the skills that government's really targeting.
Labour's finance spokesperson, Grant Robertson, says the current policy is not working.
Clearly, at the moment, it needs to be reviewed. The Reserve Bank has been clear that this is one of the issues that needs to be sorted. It is only one, and if it only focuses on immigration, it won't solve the problem. But if it ignores immigration, it won't solve the problem either.
The New Zealand First Leader, Winston Peters, says the Reserve Bank's comments show people are finally realising the truth of what he's long been saying, that immigration is a problem.
Well, I've said it for a long time. All I've got back from the other political parties, and dare I say it, the media, is that this party, New Zealand First, is racist and xenophobic. Now what are you going to say to the Reserve Bank Deputy Governor when he makes a similar speech?
But immigration is only one part of the migration jigsaw. There's not much that can be done when New Zealanders choose to return home from overseas or stay here in the first place. Nick Goodall, a senior research analyst at CoreLogic, says that's having an impact on the property market, with listings at an all-time low in places such as Waikato, Bay of Plenty, Wellington and Otago.
With those less people leaving, those people aren't putting stock on the market. So those people that might have previously moved to Australia, they're not doing so. Why else are there less listings? The fact that investors and first home buyers, a couple of the major groups of buyers, those are people that don't typically add to stock. So they're not selling stock to buy stock, they're just buying stock.
The Green Party co-leader James Shaw also wants a review of migration policy. He says it's not so much about the number of people coming into the country, but more about making sure people don't just settle in Auckland.
We know that there are some industries that really do struggle getting skilled staff, and we do also know that there are towns who would really appreciate having people move there, while, Auckland is under quite a lot of pressure.
However, the Reserve Bank says if the migration levels are adjusted, it would only moderate the housing market imbalance over time. Little comfort for first-home buyers struggling to get a foot on the property ladder now. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Cormay here in Tene.
Get on with it, John Key said to the Reserve Bank earlier in the week. The Reserve Bank, in a speech about which there was increasing speculation, didn't get on with it. It said it was looking at things, but announced no immediate action. It also signalled a belief that much of what's happening was beyond its control, including buyer demand, driven, as you've just heard, being discussed by immigration. I caught up with John Key during a media stand-up in the West Auckland suburb of Massia this afternoon. He rejects immigration as a significant contributor to demand-led price increases, and he continues to insist there's more the Reserve Bank can do.
Well, I knew they weren't going to make an announcement on Thursday, but I stand by the statement I made, which is that they should get on with it. I mean, the reality is that the investor category has been a significant part of what's going on. If they increase the loan to value for investors, then they reduce the amount of reduction they can get through depreciation effectively. So in a way, they deal with some of those gearing issues. They've got all of that capability available to them. Actually, the major banks keep telling me that they want the Reserve Bank to do that. So the point is, yes, if they sit around, they can wait, but all they're doing is giving a signal to investors they're likely to do it, and all that does is encourage more investors coming in. And that point has been backed up again by a number of the bank economists and things today. So my basic point is, look, in the end, the bank has to make its own calls, but I personally think if they're going to move on investors, well, you don't need to wait 6 months to do that.
What should they do, Prime Minister, if they're going to get on with it? What is it?
Well, I think in terms of loan-to-value ratios, it's a 30% ratio at the moment. For investors, I think they can increase that. No, they can do that literally overnight. They have that capability. It's in place. It's working, and actually been working reasonably effectively. So, moving that ratio up is something that's within their power.
And is this kind of discussion now an acknowledgement that the supply side alone is not enough? I mean, are you seriously concerned, one, about the unaffordability of property, and two, about the exposure to a property bubble that people who are in the market have?
So I think in terms of whether the demand side things will work, I mean, firstly, we've been saying for some time that prices have been rising, more rapidly than the government would want. I think if you look at the demand side parts of the equation, they're not terribly effective at slowing up house prices, despite what people think. So I remember when everybody said put on the equivalent of a bright line test, it would solve the issues. Well, it really didn't. If you go and have a look in Australia, they have more extensive things like stamp duty, more extensive capital gains tax, and potentially soon a land tax. Those things haven't stopped Sydney and Melbourne prices going up. What will ultimately solve the issue is supply. That is dramatically increasing, and that's why there are 24,000 more people employed in Auckland. That's why you've got a huge increase in the number of houses being consented and built. But as we saw in Christchurch, it just takes some time, and it won't matter what politician gets up and tells you they can resolve that issue overnight. They're fundamentally misleading you, because there's just a lead time between how long it takes to get the infrastructure built and the house out of the ground. Now, we've had 20% compound growth in housing here in Auckland, a number of people working in that sector for the last 4 years. Just drive around Auckland, you'll see how much is happening, but it can't happen overnight, and it won't matter what politician tells you they can.
Prime Minister, the stuff you were talking about before, the growth in jobs, the apprentices, the growth in the housing market, that's substantively being driven by immigration, isn't it? And so therefore it's not in your interests to address immigration, or even really to acknowledge it as an issue, because that's driving the economy, isn't it?
No, I think if you look at what's driving the economy, you've got three things. You've got very low interest rates. So, if you go back, they're the lowest interest rates in over 60 years. Low interest rates themselves don't drive economic growth. They help, but yet they have to be coupled with high levels of business confidence. So, for instance, Japan has negative interest rates, so does Switzerland. But actually, levels of economic growth in Japan have been fairly dire for the last 30 years. What's interesting in New Zealand is you've got very high levels of confidence from both consumers and businesses. So businesses think they'll make money, and consumers think they'll, at least people think that they'll get jobs. So if you think about those two aspects, that's what's driving it. Migration is one factor, but it's really interesting if you look at the data, for instance, around the number of residents that are coming to New Zealand. Those numbers have either been lower or actually static. So what's really changing is those New Zealanders that used to leave. And I remember then the debate used to be, if you want to see your grandkids, go to the departure lounge of the airport, because that's the place to see them. We don't have that discussion anymore now, because Kiwis are coming home. But that delivers another issue, which is, making sure there are enough houses for them.
We're going to cut out of that interview with the Prime Minister, because we're going to go to Sarah Murvosh, who's a Dallas news reporter. Sarah is very near the garage where one of the shooters in this terrible event this afternoon appears to be holed up, and Sarah is running out of cell phone battery. We so appreciate your time, Sarah. We're very grateful indeed. What's going on there? The negotiations, we've been told by David Brown, are still continuing. Is it just silent all around you?
It is silent. The overall atmosphere has become a bit calmer since a few hours ago, right after the march, right after the shooting, because a lot of people have been able to leave downtown. The remaining people are sitting on the curb, essentially. There are cop cars all around flashing lights, basically waiting to see what's going to happen. My photographer colleague did just tell me that they moved everyone back a block, so away from the garage. And I did, a few minutes ago, see at least... Actually, I'm looking at it right now. I see two people in the garage, maybe on 1, 2, 3, maybe about 4 stories up, and they're just sort of, don't know what they're doing, but we're told that the negotiations are happening on the second floor, but I can't see that.
Now, this is a community college, is it, El Centro? So, and it is strongly believed, in fact, it's known as a fact that the suspect is inside El Centro?
Well, I'm not sure. I can't confirm that. But as far as what Chief David Brown said, is that the negotiations are happening in the parking garage, which is located, if you're looking at the Dallas skyline, we've got the Omni Hotel and the Bank of America building, which have lit up. And those are two sort of icons in the Dallas skyline, and it's located right between them. So right downtown, by the courthouse, by the Dallas Morning News building.
Sarah, I'm reading reports that the police now have a big decision to make, which is, do they continue to negotiate or do they go in? What is the sort of military status of the kind of guns and machinery you're seeing going into this area?
I see police with rifles and I mean, they're all armed, of course. I can't see what I assume is a SWAT team right inside or near the garage. And you know, if they do decide to go in and take some sort of action, it's safe to assume the SWAT team would be involved, I would assume.
Sarah Mervosh, who is joining us live from very near the scene where one of the assailants is holed up. It's now suggested there was as many as 4 people involved in all of this. Dallas Police Chief David Brown says they are negotiating with a suspect at that garage that Sarah is looking across towards. Thank you so much for your time, Sarah. Running out of battery and also filing, of course, for her own newspaper. The time is 5.5 minutes to 6. The Auckland businessman who threatened to spike infant milk formula with 1080 poison has had 15 months added to his prison sentence after he was caught in a party pill sting with buckets of illegal drugs. Jeremy Hamish Kerr was back at the High Court in Auckland today. The term will be served on top of his 8.5-year prison sentence for sending anonymous letters to dairy giant Fonterra and federated farmers in November 2014 in the hope the government would ban 1080. Our Auckland reporter Edward Gay was in court and he filed this report.
Kerr's lawyer John Billington QC said his client's realised what he's done and won't ever be back before the courts.
There is an element of bringing to an end in a meaningful way a very sorry and sad part of this man's life.
Justice Venning said the police became aware of Kerr in September 2011 when he was spotted having coffee with a key target. Kerr unwittingly led them to a secure storage lock-up in East Tamaki. A covert police search found buckets of pills numbering in their thousands, powders and pill stamping equipment.
Mr. Kerr, you're a businessman. You took a business risk in becoming involved in dealing in drugs in this way, and you were caught.
The pills contain BZP and TFMPP, which when combined has similar effects as MDMA or ecstasy. Kerr told police he had stored the ingredients for some time, that they'd lost their potency and he could only sell them for $2 each.
If the approximately 32,000 form pills in your possession were sold even at $2 a pill, you would have received $64,000. Their value on the open market was considerably more, as much as $20 to $40 each.
That means Kerr's stash was worth between $640,000 and $1.2 million at street value. In sentencing, Justice Venning noted Kerr has a previous conviction for growing and selling cannabis. He took time off for the guilty plea and to take into account Kerr's 8.5-year sentence for blackmail. At the sentencing for the blackmail charges in March this year, Justice Venning noted that Kerr manufactured an alternative to 1080 poison and financial gain was the motivation behind the blackmail. The cost of the 1080 investigation to agencies was in the order of $37 million, and Justice Venning said it could have had a catastrophic effect on the New Zealand export industry. I Tamaki Makoto, mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Edward Gay tēnei.
Kia ora, Edward. It's 3 minutes to 6. It's been a heavy old program so far. After the news, we're going to talk to April Rain. It's quite an extraordinary interview. She describes being black in America, and she describes the fact that when her children go out, she just hopes they're not stopped by the police. Quite a remarkable interview. That's coming up after 6 o'clock. We will go back live to Dallas after 6 o'clock. Lots more from Dallas before the end of the program tonight, but we're just going to escape into a fantasy world for a couple of minutes. If you're thinking about buying a lotto ticket for Powerball this Saturday, you won't be alone. The New Zealand Lotteries Commission estimates that around 2 million people, 2 million, that's almost half the population, will be playing this weekend for their share of the biggest prize in lotto history, $40 million. Our reporter Jessie Chang has more.
The New Zealand Lottery Commission is expecting nearly 2 million players for tomorrow's must-be-won record prize of $40 million. It was certainly busy at the Lotto shop on Queen Street in Auckland CBD today. I had to wait around 10 minutes to talk to the owner of the store, Jay Patel, who was busy serving hopeful players. He told me people have been queuing non-stop to buy tickets for tomorrow night's draw.
But that's how Lotto is. The people just go in when it's big and they like to play when it's big.
A spokesperson for the Commission, Amelia Mesure, says sales are skyrocketing, with Wednesday's Powerball sales 50% up from the week before.
Sales are tracking really well. We see many more people coming into the game when the jackpot is high.
But what would you do with $40 million? Some Aucklanders were keen for a holiday escape.
I was planning on going to Asia at the end of the year, so I would go to the entire world for a long time, with 40 million probably.
Quit a job and go for travel.
Yeah, same. I will definitely quit my job and travel everywhere.
But others had Auckland's expensive housing market on their mind.
The first thing would be to pay off the mortgage.
Invest it in property, shares.
The $40 million surpasses the previous highest lotto prize of $36 million, which was won 7 years ago by a Masterton family. And while opinion is divided over whether tickets from rural or city areas are luckier, Ms. Mazur advises punters to go with their gut.
I say wherever you feel your luck, that's where you should get your ticket.
For Checkpoint, ko Jesse Chang, tēnei.
Coming up to 6 o'clock, after 6, 4 police officers are dead, 7 others have been wounded. Negotiations are taking place with one of the shooters in Dallas, Texas. We will go back there after the news at 6. We'll also speak to April Rain, a lawyer, journalist, campaigner, the woman behind Oscars So White. You'll remember that. And she is going to talk to us about the shootings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile and the impact of all of this violence on black Americans. All of that is coming up, plus we'll go to Wimbledon. Kia ora everyone, you are with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Thank you for being with us. Very, very busy program. We're going to go back to Dallas as soon as we can, so let's get straight to the news with Katrina Batten.
Ngā mihi nui, good evening. 11 officers from the Dallas Police Department and Dallas Area Rapid Transit System have been shot and 4 of them have died. Dallas Police Chief David Brown says at least 2 shooters from separate elevated positions above the demonstrations opened fire. A witness, Ishmael De Jesus, filmed one of the men gunning down a policeman.
It looked like an execution, honestly. He stood over him after he was already down. Shot him maybe 3 or 4 more times in the back.
My God.
So
My God.
At that point, I didn't know if he was confirmed dead or anything, obviously, but he was down for about 5 more minutes until anybody can come get to him.
Ishmael De Jesus, who says the shooter ran off towards the nearby El Centro College parking garage. The police have one man cornered and he's telling them there are bombs in the area. There have been largely peaceful protests around the United States after the shooting of Philando Castile, a black man, by police near St. Paul, Minnesota. In Louisiana, the U.S. Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation into the shooting of another black man, Alton Sterling, who was killed by police outside a shop in Baton Rouge. The government will not be reviewing its migration policy despite 3 political parties urging it to do so. The Reserve Bank yesterday said an inflow of 160,000 people in the past 3 years was putting pressure on the housing market. Here's our political reporter May Heron.
The New Zealand First Leader, Winston Peters, warns now the Reserve Bank has highlighted immigration, it will cop criticisms of being racist and xenophobic, just like his own party has. He says it's taken people too long to realise immigration is a problem and it will now take years to fix the housing crisis, which the government has been stubbornly ignoring. The Labour and Green parties also say the current immigration policy is not working and needs to be reviewed. However, the Economic Development Minister, Stephen Joyce, says the government fine-tunes its immigration policy all the time and a wholesale review is not needed. From Parliament, ko May Heron tēnei.
The family of the murdered 10-year-old Alex Fisher have paid tribute to him outside the High Court in Palmerston North. Alex's half-brother, 26-year-old Eric McIsaac, has just begun a life sentence for his death with a 14-year minimum non-parole period. McIsaac earlier admitted the charge and 2 lesser offences. Detective Sergeant Neil Forlong of Horowhenua Police read a statement on behalf of the family.
Alex was much more than the sad events surrounding the end of his life. We, his parents, siblings and family, had nearly 11 years of memories of a treasured and much-loved boy who will forever live in the hearts of so many. We wish to focus on these memories and do the one thing that matters most. Remember Alex.
Detective Sergeant Neil Forlong. During the hearing, it became clear that McIsaac would not reveal his reasons for killing his brother while on a camping trip. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council will not sign off on spending $80 million on the Ruitaniwha Dam yet, despite 3 key conditions being met. It says resource consents, confirmation of design and building contracts and farmer support have been confirmed, but it's waiting for final confirmation of investor interest. The dam and associated irrigation scheme could irrigate up to 30,000 hectares of farmland in central Hawke's Bay, but dozens of protesters attended today's council meeting angry at the spending of so much money on the dam. The council says it expects to have the required number of investors within a few weeks. A 47-year-old farmhand who abducted and indecently assaulted a 5-year-old girl in Palmerston North had previous convictions in Australia. Brendan Paul Hansen was jailed for 8 years in the High Court this afternoon, having admitted attacking the girl in February. It was revealed Hansen had been jailed for 15 months for attacking another 5-year-old girl while she slept in Western Australia in 1991. His lawyer, Fergus Steedman, says for a long time, Hansen believed he had conquered his dark thoughts.
He did think that he had managed to bury the demons. He made this comment to me: I thought that it, meaning his sexual attraction to young girls, was a long time finished. I thought that I was normal again. Sadly, he wasn't. He's never had the treatment which we now know he should have had.
A lawyer, Fergus Steedman. In sport, their own Super Rugby playoff hopes may be dashed, but the Blues could be the deciding factor in the Australian Conference. The Blues face the ACT Brumbies in Auckland tonight. The Brumbies and New South Wales Waratahs are tied at the top of the Australian Conference with just 2 rounds left. Blues assistant coach Glenn Moore says they're focused on their own game rather than upsetting the Australian standings.
Our focus all year has been in and around making sure we perform. And we think, we've made good progress, and particularly in the last few games. It's all about us getting our processes and systems and that right, still building on that, and ultimately looking for that real performance.
Kick-off is at 7:35. Meanwhile, the Chiefs will welcome the return of Liam Messam for their match against the Queensland Reds in Brisbane later tonight. Messam will start on the bench after failing to make the New Zealand Olympic 7 side. The Chiefs lead the New Zealand Super Rugby Conference, while the Reds are second to last on the Australian ladder. The New Zealand golfer Lydia Ko will have to stage a fight back if she's to even make the cut at the latest major championship in California. Ko was in a tie for 52nd at the US Open after a 1-over first par round and is in danger of missing the second round cut. South Korea's Miriam Lee leads at 8 under. And France will host Portugal in the final of the European Football Championships on Monday after beating world champions Germany 2-0 this morning. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, what happens to us after we die, in the developed world at least, needs major reform, according to Caitlin Doughty, American funeral director and author. Professor Tim Jackson argues the case for prosperity without growth. And conductor Sir Andrew Davis is in New Zealand for a performance of Messiaen's Illuminations of the Beyond. Join me, Kim Hill, tomorrow morning from 8 o'clock on RNZ National.
Met service weather to midnight tomorrow, Apōpō. There are warnings in force for parts of central New Zealand today. Gisborne to Wairarapa, rain with some heavy falls from Hawke's Bay northwards, easing to showers tonight or tomorrow morning and gradually clearing in Wairarapa. For the remainder of the North Island, scattered rain or showers becoming confined to eastern Northland tomorrow. Severe gale southeasterlies about the central high country and eastern Bay of Plenty easing tomorrow. Nelson Buller and Westland mainly fine with high cloud, southeasterlies, severe gale in exposed places today. Marlborough and Canterbury, cloudy with scattered rain or drizzle, clearing tomorrow and becoming fine. Severe southeast gales about the Sounds easing tomorrow. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, fine spells increasing, frosts tomorrow morning. And for the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy. It's coming up to 6:08.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. We're going to go back to Dallas, where police are negotiating with an armed suspect in a downtown parking garage. 4 police officers are dead, 7 have been wounded, along with 1 civilian in a shooting during a Black Lives Matter protest in the Texas city this afternoon, our time. At a media conference not long ago, the police chief, David Brown, confirmed 3 people are in custody, a woman who was in the area at the time, and 2 people who the police stopped in a Mercedes car. However, he says the police are still negotiating with another suspect who's shooting at officers from the garage of El Centro Community College.
The suspect that we are negotiating with, that has exchanged gunfire with us over the last 45 minutes, has told our negotiators that the end is coming and he's going to hurt and kill more of us, meaning law enforcement, and that there are bombs all over the place in this garage and in downtown. So we are being very careful in our tactics so that we don't injure or put any of our officers in harm's way, including the citizens of Dallas, as we negotiate further. We still don't have a complete comfort level that we have all the suspects.
That's Police Chief David Brown, who himself began with Dallas Police in 1983. The Mayor of Dallas, Mike Rawlings, spoke about the slain officers.
We've got to support our police force and do their job to make sure we get to the bottom and the root cause of all of this. So please make it easy for the police force and other citizens to check your traffic routes in the morning before you come in.
A Dallas resident, Ishmael De Jesus, was hiding in the Crowne Plaza Hotel when he saw someone shooting and recorded the footage on his mobile phone.
I got up from the bed, I went outside and saw this man clear as day, shooting around aimlessly. It was complete mayhem. There was people running all over the intersection. Honestly, I don't know how there was any more dead bodies out there. But I can confirm as well that that man that was shown on that picture was not the guy that I filmed shooting.
He says he saw the shooter kill a police officer and described what he looked like to CNN.
He did have some tactical pants on. He had a tactical green shirt on. I honestly don't know what race he was. I can't, just throw out a race out there. But it did look planned. I mean, he just parked and he knew where to stand and opened fire. He had ammo ready. He was ready to go.
Eyewitness Ishmael De Jesus. We're going to go live to a reporter at the scene shortly, but the shootings this afternoon happened during an otherwise, previously peaceful protest, a Black Lives Matter protest. They were taking place all around the country in the US today, spurred by the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile and a large number of people before them. Both of those men died on news programs, on the internet, on social media over and over again. Somewhere, as we speak, I'm sure someone will be watching that footage of them die. Now, April Rain, a lawyer, managing editor of BroadwayBlack.com, and the woman behind Oscars So White, has written about this for the Washington Post. Yes, having the video evidence of what happened is crucial so justice can be done, but replaying it, repeating it, tweeting it, posting it on Facebook, April Rain says sharing and resharing the video amounts now to a terrible kind of voyeurism.
There's definitely a prurient entertainment going on with respect to showing Black bodies that are either dead or dying or assaulted, not just in social media, but also on our news programs. So the New York Daily News, for example, today had on their front page, Alton Sterling face up, body riddled with bullets, bloody, on their front cover. And it's not even clear to me whether he was dead or in fact dying. So it could have been a picture of a dying man. I believe that the videos are important. There are times when they are used as potential evidence in a case. There are times when they dispute what law enforcement officials have said has happened, so they are important. However, once those videos are placed in the hands of the correct agencies, either the law enforcement officials or the agencies that are investigating the case, there is no positive benefit to replaying them and repeating them over and over again, either on social media or on news media outlets. If you are not already enraged by what you've been told, by what you've already seen, then seeing someone's body laying on the ground shouldn't make a difference to you. It is almost as if Black people are not believed.
April, the latest case, in fact, actually, as you've just pointed out, it's not even the latest case. I mean, they're happening so fast that this is the second latest case, extraordinarily, is Philando Castile. And he worked in a school cafeteria, right? He was pulled over because there was a tail light out on his car. He's dead now. And I read one of the staff members from his school saying, how do we explain this to the children? And I thought, wow, that's big, because this is a story about a fellow who shouldn't be dead under any circumstances. And it's also a story about the police, who children are taught to trust, doing something which on the face of it seems terribly wrong. And that's a microcosm of what America is grappling with, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, with Philando Castile, he did everything right. You know, when he was pulled over, and when we have the video to prove that, you know, when he was pulled over, he said he had a registered firearm in the car, as he was legally permitted to have because of it's an open carry state. He was reaching for his license and registration, and he was shot. I have a teenage son. What do I tell my son when he is pulled over after the case of Philando Castile? Because Mr. Castile did everything that he was supposed to do. His hands were always visible. He let the officer know that he had a weapon in the car. He was never reaching for the weapon. He was asked to produce his license and insurance and registration, and he was in the process of doing that when he was shot. If that had been me, if that had been my child or my husband, I don't know that I would have done anything differently, and yet Mr. Castile is dead. So you're absolutely right, John. There's definitely a disconnect in how we teach our children. You know, just as Black people, I have to have a discussion with my son every time he leaves the house. He's a teenager, he's able to drive the car, and my heart sinks. You know, and I don't sleep. If he's going out with his friends for the evening, he's a teenager. He should be able to do that, you know, and have fun. I don't sleep. I stay by the phone until I hear the car pulling up again to tell me that he's safe at home. We have a discussion with him repeatedly about what he's supposed to do if he's pulled over. And yet, even those discussions, as Mr. Castile's death has shown, may not save him, unfortunately.
So in New Zealand, when our teenage kids go out, we worry about them drinking and taking drugs and maybe their friends driving too fast and that they have a terrible accident. In America, you're worried that they're going to be pulled over because their tail light is failing and they might be shot.
Right. And it may not even be a tail light. I mean, there are countless stories. So we worry about everything that you do in New Zealand, plus the fact that a child, you know, we call it DWB, driving while black. So it may not even be a taillight. For example, I know that the taillights in my car right now are fully operational, but my son is driving an SUV and he is a teenage kid. And so if an officer wants to, he can pull him over just because he doesn't look like he should belong in that car. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's not a rundown car from long ago that, you know, maybe he's worked up to save to buy, because this is a relatively new car and it's, you know, it's a nice looking sports utility vehicle. He could be pulled over for not breaking any laws just because he looks like he shouldn't be where he is. And there's no way for me to prevent that. You know, I cannot protect my children. And as a mother, as a parent, I don't know that there's anything worse that one can say. You know, these are my children that I love and I pray over on a regular basis. But I send them out into this world and I don't know whether they will come home. You know, Tamir Rice was playing alone in a park by himself. He wasn't threatening anyone, and yet the police officers pulled up on him and he was dead in less than 2 seconds. So that means that our children he was not breaking any laws. So that means that our children cannot play in parks. What type of childhood does a Black child in America have when you can't even do exactly what you're supposed to be doing and live to tell the story?
April Rain describing the kind of experience that led to the Black Lives Matter protests throughout the United States today. Of course, one of those protests has been overtaken by terrible violence, and we have been reporting on that throughout Checkpoint tonight. I'd like to give a small insight into the extent of feeling in the United States now, and this isn't from some lunatic nut job, although on the surface, on the face of it, it is. This is from a guy who has been a congressman. His name is Joe Walsh. He is an American conservative talk radio host and former politician. He served in the US House of Representatives for Illinois. He tweeted, although he's since deleted this tweet, 3 Dallas cops killed, 7 wounded. This is war now. Watch out, Obama. Watch out, Black Lives Matter punks. Real America is coming after you. That's a tweet from a former congressman. We're going to leave Dallas for a while. We will go back before the end of the program if anything is happening. But let's head to Christchurch, where housing services providing supervised homes for vulnerable young people have closed. A local youth worker says there are now few options for young people coming out of child, youth and family care or residential care in Christchurch. Our reporter Rachel Graham has been finding out more.
Since July last year, Presbyterian Support has run a 6-bedroom house for young people who needed help finding somewhere to live. The home was staffed 24 hours and was next door to another home the organisation runs for young parents and their children. However, the chief executive of Presbyterian Support Upper South Island, Vaughan Milner, says it became apparent that the behaviour of many of the young men was putting people at risk.
A lot of the young men that came into that unit, while they needed accommodation, they weren't at a point where they were ready or able to sort of change their behaviours or deal with issues related to violence or drug abuse, and there was therefore a risk to the neighbouring young parents, staff and the young men themselves, as well as the general neighbourhood.
Mr Milner says they also provided support to get the young people into training, back to school or into the workforce and counselling.
Most of those young men weren't sort of ready for that. They simply wanted somewhere to sleep and eat and to do their own thing.
Mr Milner says Presbyterian Support is now focusing its efforts on young parents, who he says are often much more motivated to change. The General Manager of Youth Cultural Development, Annie Watkins, says the closure of this service and a similar service run by Canterbury Youth Development Program called Dormer House is a massive loss for the city. She says without these sorts of services, some young people are left with few options.
Sadly, that's why we have such a high number of homeless throughout the country. We've got young people who live in really unsafe situations. They sofa surf, they sex for favours, they steal, they end up in prison. I mean, some young people think it's an option to go to prison to get their life together. I mean, it's a pretty sad indictment on society when young people are thinking like that.
Ms Watkins says both services had lots of goodwill behind them, but not enough funding.
Both models have been poorly resourced, and we really need to we need to invest in developing young people into independence and into positive living, which it's been a real gap.
Canterbury Youth Development Program wouldn't comment on the closure of their service. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, call Rachel Graham, TNA.
Let's escape into tennis. The Swiss tennis player Roger Federer. Fed will attempt to reach his 11th Wimbledon final when he meets Canadian Milos Raonic in tonight's semi-final, and it will be experience against youth in that matter, with Federer 9 years older than Raonic and having appeared in 39 major semi-finals compared with just 2 for the Canadian. Joining us now by Skype video is our excellent Wimbledon correspondent, Dave Luddy. David, it's lovely to have you with us as always. Raonic, does he have a chance?
Without a shadow of a doubt. After all, he's got John McEnroe in his corner, hasn't he? And he's got this huge serve. He's moving really well. And with McEnroe helping him during the grass court season, he's asked Raonic, come on, you've got to come forward, you've got to volley. Because if you've got a big serve and on grass, you've got to come in and volley, just like Stefan Edberg used to do so many years ago. He's got an excellent chance. And you just think maybe Raonic might cause a surprise. Because remember, Roger Federer in his quarter-final really had a tough match as well. And he was tested the distance by Marin Cilic. Remember, he came back from 2 sets to love down, 3 games all, love 40 down, and he came through and won. And I think that mentally, not physically, because there's been a day's rest, but mentally that might have taken the edge off Roger Federer. So going into the match, 50-50, because I don't want to sort of sit on the wall.
Thanks, Dave. The other men's semi-final tonight, home favourite Andy Murray. I hadn't realised he was the second seed going into Wimbledon. Gosh, so Andy Murray facing the Czech, Thomas Berdych. Andy Murray's obviously going to have the crowd screaming for him. What do you think of the Czech's chances?
Andy Murray has beaten Thomas Berdych the very last 4 times, and he's won 9 sets in a row against the big Czech, who's got a fantastic game, but hasn't quite got the flair that Andy Murray's got. And we're talking about big coaches, Raonic with McEnroe. Who has Andy Murray got in his corner, brooding there in the players' box? Ivan Lendl. And you just think Andy Murray, champion, of course, here at Wimbledon 3 years ago, 2013, when Lendl was with him for 2 years up to that point, Andy Murray won both his Grand Slam titles and won the Olympic title. I think Andy, I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think Andy, who's playing so well with the crowd behind him, is going to be Murray and another British win.
Yeah, OK, so a Murray-Federer final would be a wonderful thing. I know that's you're saying 50-50 in the other semi, but that would be exciting. Let's talk about the women, because their final is tomorrow night, not tonight, but tomorrow night. Serena Williams taking on Angelique Kerber in the women's final. The more I see of Serena Williams, the more I think that she is just one of the all-time greats, isn't she?
Without any shadow of a doubt, if she does win tomorrow, our time, it will be a 22nd Grand Slam for Serena. That will equal Steffi Graf's 22 and just 2 behind the all-time leader, the Australian Margaret Court. But you've got to remember this. Angelique Kerber, a left-hander from Germany, who's playing the best tennis of her life, beat Serena in the Australian Open final and beats her well.
That's right.
And you just think that will give Serena, that will give Angelique Kerber just a little bit of an edge. But, you know, there's a big difference playing on grass courts. It's much quicker. And Serena's got such a huge serve, which we saw yesterday against Elena Vesnina when she beat her in 48 minutes. You know, absolutely thrashed her off the court. She was like a tank, absolutely crushing a stationary car. So I still think it's going to be Serena. She's going to be too big for Kerber.
Dave Luddy, we really appreciate talking to you as always, Dave. Thank you so much. We're going to leave Dave and return now to Dallas because Austin York, who is from KRLD, who is a reporter who's already joined us once in Checkpoint. Austin, we so appreciate your time and your generosity because we know how busy you are. Thank you for joining us again. What is the latest? What can you tell us?
Well, right now, about 30 minutes ago, the Dallas police chief just spoke and told us the update, which is right now they have a person as a suspect is holed up in a garage, and they are trying to negotiate with that person to put down his weapon and to come out peacefully. Now, that negotiation has started about an hour ago. This person is saying either he has planted bombs all over the city and all over downtown, that is, and that the end is near, quote unquote. So Police Chief David Brown has been looking at different options to end the negotiations if the guy is not cooperating. But when he makes those threats of bombs or things like that, they have to make it credible. Now, Dallas police also have 3 other suspects in custody that they believe are connected. All 4 are connected right now to this incident. The 3 that are in custody, however, are not being cooperative at all with Dallas police. So right now, they're not being able to get anything from them. And the police chief said he doesn't believe, he is not comfortable saying that all 4 suspects or all suspects are accounted for. There could be more out there.
Austin, can you describe where you are now? Where are you talking to us from?
I am actually about 3 or 4 blocks away from the garage in which one of the suspects is pulled up and being negotiated with police. That's about 3 or 4 blocks away. About 30 or 40 patrol cars are right in between me and that garage. So you can see, or you can tell, there's a very heavy police presence in this area, and it has not let up since the beginning of that shooting.
Yeah, lots of
around 9:30 our time.
Lots of noise in the background. So who else is there? Obviously, lots and lots of police officers. Are there people who've just come to see what's going on, or have most of the public left?
No, absolutely. There are police officers that still are, I mean, there are onlookers here that are still looking around, seeing what's going on. Some of these people are waiting to get into the area to see if they can find their car or get their belongings or whatever. But the point is that there are still, I would say, roughly around 100 people just standing around this particular corner, which is only 3 or 4 blocks away, as onlookers, just to see what's going on.
And Austin, I know you need to go and file for your own radio station. We're so grateful for your time. But do people live in the area? Are there apartments? Is there inner city living where this garage is, where the shooting took place? Will there be people locked in apartments or homes in there?
Absolutely. And downtown, one of the things that downtown in the last few years has been revitalized. And so there's been a lot of downtown living that has kind of moved into the area. And this is definitely going to affect them tomorrow. Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings come out and said that most of this downtown, the heart of downtown, is going to be a crime scene. So he's telling people to stay away from this area if they can. And many people are going to work in downtown are going to have to call their employers and say, hey, do you need me? Can I get into work? So it's going to be a situation here for at least another day.
Thank you so much, Austin York, for your time. Austin is with KRLD in Dallas, Texas, and has very kindly joined us live from the scene twice tonight. We really appreciate it. That brings Checkpoint to an end for the night and for the week. 4 Dallas police officers have been killed and 7 wounded by sniper fire, and I think on the face of it, from the footage we've seen, just straight up on the ground fire at very close range. Obviously, RNZ News will update this throughout the night. On behalf of everyone on the Checkpoint team, have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The police in Dallas, Texas say a suspected sniper cornered in a parking garage after 4 officers were slain is sporadically firing at officers trying to negotiate with him. 7 other officers and a civilian were wounded when 2 snipers opened fire during a Black Lives Matter demonstration. The police say another suspect has turned himself in. And the government will not be reviewing its migration policy despite 3 political parties urging it to do so. Our next news and weather is at 7.
On Country Life this week, there's a gold rush in the honey industry. Returns have taken off and it seems some people will do anything to get their hands on bees.
Well, there's greed. There's a lot of greed around. There's got to be a beekeeper who takes a hive.
I've gone to now locking every gate on every farm that I've got. That doesn't stop them. They cut locks, cut gates, cut fences, just taking whole apiaries.
But hard to know somebody in a white suit. You can't tell whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's the Prime Minister. You wouldn't have a clue.
Country Life.